Teachers of Reddit, what is something hilarious that you've learned about a parent through a student blabbering on? From one of my 5th graders, my mom loves being single. She has a ton of boyfriends. I also hear the occasional my dad's friend was over when I woke up this morning. I was on recess duty sitting with a group of my 2nd graders when one girl starts very seriously telling us about the really mysterious thing that happened to her that weekend. She was playing in her parents' room when she found a toy she didn't recognize. She thought it was so bizarre because it was bumpy and an odd curvy shape, and when you push a button it vibrates. Wondering what it could possibly be, she took it into the living room where her parents were entertaining a few friends and held it up asking what it is. She said, everyone laughed but they wouldn't tell me what it was or why they were laughing. She was so genuinely perplexed. It was all I could do to keep it together and play along. I just scratched my head and said, huh, that's so strange. I wonder what it could have been. Who knows? One of life's great mysteries. In about 6 or so years that poor girl is going to have a horrible revelation. I had twin 7th graders who found out that their mom was a very high earning stripper. They were very proud. She told everyone that she was in sales. Yes, she was very beautiful. This is oddly endearing. 5-year-old adorable little girl. 5-year-old my mummy went on holiday with her friends. Me, oh how nice. Did she have a good time? Yes she did. But she kept falling over. Whoa, how strange. Hope she's okay now. Working with kids is awesome sometimes. One of the 5-year-old boys I teach said this a month or so back. My mum is 40 but she told me to say 30. A gaggle of 4-year-olds somehow got on the topic of guns. A kid said something about them being dangerous and one girl nodded solemnly and said my daddy got shot in the butt and the doctors couldn't get it back out. That's why I can't slap his butt. I laughed and told her he probably just didn't want her slapping his butt. When he came to pick her up, she told him the whole story, including that I didn't believe her. He turned bright red and affirmed that he was, in fact, hit with a stray bullet while hunting. When he got to where it hit, the kid pointed to his right butt cheek and gleefully proclaimed right there. I still get a kick out of that one. I was teaching a media awareness unit that includes a representations of gender and media components to my older high schoolers a few years ago, and the subject of pornography and whether or not it is degrading came up. It's always interesting to see how students feel about it, but one of my more typically boisterous kids is silent, arms folded, looking peed. His friend who sits next to him says something along the lines of "Her ain't nothing wrong with a little porny prawn," and reaches over to high-five him, and the kid just deadpans him. After class, the high-fiving kid wants to know why he was left hanging, and then finally the other kid sucks his teeth and says, "Come on, you know my mom does that crap," and then goes on to say how he's terrified to watch any prawn featuring women of his ethnicity because he's afraid his mom will be in it, and how he still can't get comfortable watching prawn anyway because it's what his mom does. Turns out that his mom is not only a prawnster, but is one of the biggest names in the industry, drove a Beamer, bought the family a super nice house, was always dressed to the nines, and in an Audrey Hepburn kind of way. She also was one of the best parents to have around during school functions because she knew how to organize everything. She made sure her kids had awesome grades, and she was an all-around super pleasant person. When I worked in a special ed preschool, we used to have a pool on grounds that we used in the summer program. I was only an aide at the time, and one little girl was especially close to me even though she wasn't assigned to me specifically. She asked if she could change with me in my stall after swimming. Obviously I said no and sent her to her locker room and quickly tried to retreat back to mine. But before she closed the door she said, "What's the big deal? I have boobas and a vaguba just like you. I've seen them before. I take baths with my mom. Her vaguba has hair like a head though." It was hilarious. I'm glad I was walking in the other direction so she couldn't see me trying not to laugh. Boobas and vaguba. That's brilliant, haha. This came from a 1st grader who has a parent who is also a teacher. The kid's dad teaches science at the high school. Sometimes dad makes me do his homework and shows his class because I'm smarter than them. Yep. His dad has him do the homework assignments and then he takes them to the high school and yells at his classes because if a 1st grader can do it, then why can't you? Asking about that at parent teacher conferences just about cracked me and my classroom teacher up. Student blurts out, "We got a new car. Mum and dad were up all night painting it." Gonna knock those stars off somehow. My mom briefly worked the behavioral room in a low-income small town school. She had a 6-year-old sent to her for standing up during class and yelling, "My mommy sucks my daddy's dong." This was my mum, who is also a teacher. 5-year-old kid sees his dad at the end of the day and screams across the school playground, her dad didn't have any underwear left, so he is wearing mum's, while pointing a finger and laughing. Oops. Pack a bag, Timmy. Daddy is taking you to the fire station. I was English tutoring and this 5-year-old told me that her dad had a big willy. I was shocked and asked her how did she know. She told me she heard her mom talking about her dad's willy with one of her friends when she came over for coffee. Nosy little thing she is. That could have gone a completely different, significantly worse direction, and I'm very glad that it didn't. Not my story, but a friend teaches kindergarten in Provo, Utah. She said she asked her students what their parents did for work and one girl said her dad was Jesus. My friend was obviously confused and asked more questions. The little girl was insistent that her dad was in fact Jesus. Come time for parent-teacher conferences and my friend is very eager to meet Jesus. The little girl's dad comes in and my friend confronts her about his daughter's claim. The dad starts laughing and explains that he plays Jesus in the Mormon Bible videos. So the little girl was right. Her dad is Jesus. I was teaching a 14-year-old guitar and I told him that if he didn't practice, I wouldn't continue teaching him. He replied with, "Well, sorry, but I can't practice. I don't need that kind of stress. For frick's sake." As if it wasn't bad enough to find out my parents are swingers, now you want me to fricking practice? I wonder how he found out. I once asked my class about what plans they had for Thanksgiving and had a student blurt out, "I can't eat Thanksgiving anymore," after learning I was conceived during Thanksgiving dinner. So I have a student with 2 last names, but he usually only writes one on his papers. I knew this was because his dad isn't around, so he goes by his mom's. Not that unusual. Recently a girl in class was talking about how she was a surprise for her parents, so this kid chimes in with, "At least you weren't a 3-minute bathroom mistake." I was joking with my sister in school once and she said, "All of my parents' kids were mistakes." A girl nearby, without missing a beat, replies, "Number, your brother and sister were unplanned, happy accidents. You were the only mistake." Actually the other way round for me. I found out a little bit about swear words from my 1st grade teacher. When I was told I had to write right-handed, I said, "My mommy said if you tell me to do that I should tell you to go away." My teacher said, "Did mommy really say that? That's rude, and a very mean thing to say." I responded with, "Yes, but it's not as rude as." Long list of expletives. Predictably, my teacher was shocked by this. She practically screamed, "Why did you just say that, little 1st grader?" Me just blurted out the truth next, as so many other kids at that age would. Mommy says the reason why those words are taken out of songs on the radio is because they upset old people. But you're not an old lady yet, Ms. Matthews, so you shouldn't get mad. Not a teacher, I was the one that blabbed. In kindergarten my parents went in for a meet the teacher night. My dad told me my teacher was giggling when they were first introduced. Apparently at sharing time I told the class about how my dad had been on his bicycle and a bee flew up his shorts and stung him on his willy. That's why it's now called oversharing time. I had a kindergartner with autism whose dad had a new girlfriend. He came into school all excited because he was going to Jenny's house, Dad's girlfriend, tonight. I asked him where he would sleep, because his dad sometimes forgets to bring him a pillow or blanket when he stays over at the babysitter's. He said, "I'm sleeping on the couch, and Daddy is sleeping in Jenny's bed." His dad showed up later, and I made sure to tell him how excited my student was for tonight's visit. It was amazingly awkward. I had a student with severe autism who was minimally verbal. Most of the phrases he spoke were things he heard other people say, echolalia, or songs he listened to. One afternoon, he randomly started saying "Grey Goose, Grey Goose, Grey Goose." A friend of his family later confirmed that his dad loves Grey Goose. My friend's sister is pretty noticeably autistic, and while she talks a bit, food, mummy, dog, cat, yucky, caca for poop, etc., she does repeat stuff. Her favorite show is Law and Order, SVU, because the family watches it together. One day after a show, she went around yelling "our Jet son" at everything in the tone of Baba. She can't say objection properly, but she sure tries. One of the girls, 8th grade, mentioned that she was going to be absent the following day because it was her mom's birthday. The students asked how old she was. Well, after she told them, they were in shock. They suddenly asked my student's age and worked out the math. They found out that her mom was about her daughter's age when she got pregnant. The mom was going to be 29. Many moons ago, while in kindergarten, middle child informed his entire class, teacher included, that I was growing grass in the house. I got to meet a very nice social worker and police officer and show them the trays of sod we were growing as a play snack area for our guinea pigs. This is the opposite. I went to visit my stepson at school to do crafts with his class. He was in 6th grade. Somehow he and his friends were talking about punishments and got on the topic of spanking. He said, "Yeah, my dad spanks a language." Mind you, he was referring to the kind of spanking one does like in sports if you get a hit in baseball. But of course the teacher heard and the look on her face said she assumed he was talking about BDSM level shiz. Was teaching Sunday school for K4 when the kids started talking about their family's farting habits after a kid ripped one. One girl said how her cute older sister had horrid, rancid smelling farts that would go through the whole house. A boy stated that his dad would sneak up on his mom when she was reading and fart right next to her head. The kids were all giggling and I wasn't helping discourage them. So now I giggle every time I see their families at church. Wholesome. Not a teacher, but my dad had a good relationship with the kindergarten teachers that taught my brother, so they shared some good stories. One of the best was when a police officer came into the classroom one day to talk to the kids and a little girl pointed to his handcuffs and enthusiastically shared my mommy has those on her nightstand. She must be a very dedicated cop, always ready for an arrest. I teach kindergarten in the inner city. I had a boy who asked if I could come to the club his dad was opening. Told me lots of specific details on how people get in and it's limited. I looked up his dad and I found an article in the newspaper on the dad. He wanted to open a nightclub in a local area and residents were concerned because he is associated with drugs and a bad crowd. Our school requires us to conduct home visits to our students. He lived in a really nice house in a not so nice part of town. I go in and there's a giant TV in the corner of the house with 9 frames of different security cameras around the house. Knew it was something drug related. Just looked him up again. Found out he was arrested by the FBI a few months ago for trafficking H and coke since 2011. He was really great. Involved dad too. Makes me sad. A piano student said his mother would sing the scales with him as he played them on the piano, and that her singing was so off-key that it would make their dog howl and cover his ears. When I was around 6, we had a task at school to write about what we did at the weekend. I went for a long walk at the beach with my family and our dog. Now this dog was not the best behaved dog and my parents would make jokes regularly about how useless he was. My mother threw a stick into the sea and made a rather dark joke about the dog swimming out and not coming back. At school, I wrote about how I had a lovely day at the beach and how we tried to drown our dog. My mum stopped making those kind of jokes after an embarrassing chat with my teacher. My students needed to bring in some boxes for a project the other day. One student brought in a beer box from her dad. Another classmate came over and upon seeing the box, screamed, "My dad drinks that every day." Apparently his dad lets him drink it sometimes, too. The police said mommy can't drive cars anymore is definitely the worst I've heard. Not because that's a fate worse than death around here, but because there's more or less only one way to first strike lose your license in these parts and it's DWI. Apparently Katie's dad got her mom a laminating machine for her birthday and was upset when he was sent to the couch. I can't be the only one who would love a laminating machine. Everything I own would get laminated. Everything. This was a classroom of 2nd grade kids. We had these scented markers that all had odd scents. The black marker in particular smelled terrible. It smelled so remarkably bad that it became sort of disruptive because all the kids had to dare each other to smell it. I finally went over to take it away with another teacher and, of course, we had to give it a check. It was terrible. It smelled like a dumpster at SeaWorld. Like the worst sort of fish death. One last kid had to get a whiff and she loudly proclaimed, "That smells like my mom." It was really hard not to laugh and unfortunately during PT conferences we discovered it was true. I used to work with a bunch of teachers, and one of them told me this hilarious story. He taught kindergarten and often had to accompany the little boys to the restroom. He could usually tell who taught the little boys to pee at the urinal, mother or father. Some would pull their pants and underwear all the way down to the floor, others would just unzip. You get the picture. Anyway, this one little boy in his class was being raised by his single mother. She must not have known how to teach him how to shake the last little bit off. Instead, she would just pat his butt. So one day, in the restroom, my friend sees this kid take his pants and underwear all the way down, do his business, and then slap his own butt before pulling his pants back up. The mother, of course, didn't know this was happening, so that was an awkward conversation to have with her. Preschoolers blab all the time. The worst is kids with bad home lives, where it's not bad enough to do something. You can't call CPS because someone's mommy got her third proposal in her 4-year-old's lifetime and the kid keeps losing dads. But I also had a kid tell me her dad killed all the koi in their pond once and they made a secret pet store trip so mommy didn't find out, which is hilarious. I was an after school teacher but the kids called me Mr. You Are Dumb, so I figure it counts. I had a student who was very excited because her mom's boyfriend was flying in that day. She told me her mom had been dating him on the internet for 2 years and she finally saved up enough money to pay for a plane ticket. The next day I asked how everything went. The boyfriend didn't fly out and had been catfishing. My words, not the students, the mom. I would have felt bad for the mom but she was one of those my child never does anything wrong types. That's what I call the long con. There's got to be a better way to make a little money. I once confiscated a note from a 4th grader that said, "My mom says Mr. F has a nasty ass ponytail." Mr. F was the principal. Worked in a primary school for 4 years. The bus riders all straggled into the gym and were released en masse to breakfast class. One kid brought his mom's back massager in and was giving back massages to his classmates. They all thought it was really cool. To make it worse, the kid's mom volunteered on the regular. She handled it really well. I would have wanted to dig a hole in the ground and bury myself in it. My 5-year-old piano student, Felix, let me know that his mom gets very gassy if she eats beans. Apparently she kept farting in the pool while they were on vacation visiting his grandparents. I was babysitting a kid while his mom and dad worked one summer. Every day was something different. One day, the kid takes a small doll-like building toy, a Tinker toy for those of you familiar with the toy, puts it in his mouth and takes a hit like he is smoking a joint. He passes it to me, saying here like he is holding in the doobie smoke. I ask what are you doing? He replies smoking cigarettes like Dad and Uncle Jerry. But you've got to give him points for mastering the sharing part. You have been visited by the wealth rat. Subscribe in 12 seconds and he will share his wealth with you. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.